And hello to anyone watching this back. I am kind of sorry that this is alive, but needs must, and everything will be explained as well as I go through. So I'm going to try and make it as quick as possible, but I do excuse the noises in the background. That is my cat living her best life in the in the kitchen. And also, I just quickly, whilst I don't anticipate anyone showing up, I need to get my setup right because it shows differently on my phone than it does in the camera. So here we go. Not that we need to see we don't need to see my candle, but it's here, so. Hi, 𝗬𝗁𝗄𝗧 World Tarot. Hello, hello. I wasn't expecting to see anyone, but it will be lovely to have some company. So I think that is set up like I usually have my setup. I'm going to push the door too because the cat is, yeah, she's having a moment, and I don't expect my door to be knocked at. Hopefully this won't be too much longer than my usual lives. I've actually got a couple of notes with me, and for anyone who watches this quite swiftly when it comes out, you will notice that it's not the end of July yet. So there will be parts of this that I can't summarise because there's still kind of a week left of July. There are some things that are transpiring in the coming month that mean it just made sense for me to do this today. Now, whilst I have a nice gap, it's the 25th of July. I'm sure it will tell you that anyway. So yeah, we've got a week exactly until the 1st of August, but lots going to happen my end. So here I am. Feel free to tell me how you're doing. I will try and be concise still, but I will pick up comments. I'm gonna start this like I start most of these. And hi, 𝗵𝘁𝗫 and 𝗕𝗫, hi, Soulful Stories. It sounds like everyone is just either lurking or chilling for a moment, so that's kind of cool. It does mean you can ask me some questions, but I warn you now that my brain is a little off kilter, so when I say questions about the month, if there's anything that you want to know as we go along. But yeah, let's get into this. So I have my July cards and rune here. So as a reminder, the tarot cards that I'm working with for my month, see, I can't even get my words out, for my year ahead, are the Hush Tarot. The Oracle is from the Memento Mori, and then I'm using my 𝗪𝘁𝗏 runes, of which I've chosen one of per month because it's helping with my immersive study into an individual rune. And this is 𝗬𝗁𝗏𝗺. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, but we've established that's not my strong point. And this is a really interesting one, and one that makes me quite keen to begin doing rune readings with more than one rune, because it's very often discussed that this rune benefits from others around it in terms of context, because it looks exactly the same reversed as it does upright, and therefore, because there are infusions to the rune in a similar way that there can be with cards, you don't necessarily have to read reversals, but it could be the spread position, it could be the context, which allows us to know that, hey, this card is in a blocked position or is a challenge, as opposed to, you know, maybe it's a more obvious first offering. So what I've done is, of course, I've still tried to rely on the tarot and oracle and what's happened to kind of map out my understanding of this, which is a really interesting discussion. I always think of it as X marks the spot, and it has like a piratey treasure vibe to me, but more so in terms of helping me remember. It's a big discussion of gift but sacrifice as well, and the process of gift giving in just all of its iterations, from everything, this is how I understand it anyway, everything from giving without expectations, which to me is a very important part of gift giving. Otherwise it feels kind of empty and far too, I can't think of the word, like conditional to me. Whereas to give something without those feels like the most authentic expression of a gift. And then there's of course not just the receptivity of gifts, but the response, the gratitude, the reciprocation, maybe in perhaps a different way. And gifts meaning many things, gifts being energy, gifts being our time and love and respect, not just material. But to give you some context of why this has been not challenging, because I'll never force cards to fit into my month. And one of the reasons that even though I pull them as a year ahead, I don't work with them in advance, is because I like to work in a more reflective, I check in with them at the beginning of the month. I think about what they might mean, some of the invitations, I might work with some of those invitations actively if it makes sense, and then I continue to check in with them throughout the month, and it kind of builds this whole picture of which I share at the end. Good morning, Grace. And that's how I work with my year ahead spread. This is the Six of Wands. It's really non-traditional, so just so if anyone's wondering, that's what this card is from the 𝗪𝗁 Tarot, and is an interesting discussion or focus for the month. So I think one of the other important points before I share just sort of how I've contextualized these so far, given that I still have another week for this to occur. Hi, Spirit of Avalon, it's lovely to see people here. For me, 𝗪𝗁, because the Memento Mori and the symbols in it become such an intimate discussion of story and narrative that is woven within my belief system, and I think that that's a beautiful way to use the deck. It's kind of one of its superpowers. You can do it with all decks, but there's something about it. And for me, 𝗪𝗁 very immediately took me back to nostalgic times of home and safety and security and that particular sense of things. Also, I love the wooden tactile feeling of an old-fashioned 𝗪𝗁, and I would love to own one. It was my biological mother who used to use these, so I don't have any, unfortunately. And for some weird reason, if you look up old ones online, they cost loads of money and the new ones just aren't the same. So anyway, side note, but I am into the old wooden 𝗪𝗁. So I have this really homely experience of this. And the Six of Wands, to me, without any obviously context, which is why the context is so significant with these circumstantially, because I'm reading these kind of position free, so it's very much circumstance that helps me to continue to tailor the invitations and the messages, or even just the reflections and the development I might take from those as the month goes, because I remember seeing these and thinking, hell yeah, when I pulled them. Now, the reason that the closed peg is so important is because it's the pinnacle thing that pulls these together and makes for a very a difficult experience. So I'm going to talk about both the pros and the beautiful things that came out of this, and then the challenges as well, and answer why I'm doing this live now. And so in terms of gifts and triumphs, I want to say triumphs, which feels really cliche for the Six of Wands, but that's okay. I can lean into the cliche because it's very much where it led to. In fact, I should probably start with the other thing, the shit bit, because it will make more sense. Hey, Marlena, lurking is welcome. Hey, witchy wallflower. You love the 𝗕𝗁𝗂𝗂𝗁𝗃 Spirit of Avalon. There's just something about them, isn't there? Just tactile as well. Just, yeah, they're kind of rough. They don't feel... You could definitely splinter yourself on one if you wasn't careful, but there is something about them that, I don't know, just takes me back to clearly a nice point. It's got like a sense memory to it. But let's get into 𝗬𝗁𝗂𝗀𝗺 when there are maybe more power dynamics that become imbalanced, when gifts aren't given in that capacity, or when things are taken, or when people are asking for something or seeking something beyond needs, I suppose, when expectations are high. And essentially, and if you've clocked into any of my videos recently, I'm sorry, because this is going to be mildly repetitive, but because this is my monthly wrap-up, it makes most sense to say here that my partner and I were informed by our landlord that we have 2 months to leave our house, which takes us into about the middle of September. We've been here 9 years. Yes, it is legal what they're doing. No, it wasn't expected, and we were told that it would never be sold. So that's the shortest version. I don't want to get into the politics of it, and I certainly don't want to get into the stressful part of the fact that we need to be out in September and we don't know where we're going yet. But that is our reality. And I also have a minor surgical thing going on in August, in the first week of August, which is why I'm filming this today, because I'm going to obviously be in bed recuperating from the surgery. So that's kind of where I'm at, and that made sense because actually the safety of our home completely felt like it was ripped from beneath us. And of course there are far more drastic versions of that going on in the world, so it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world, but of course I can't contextualize my experience based on that there's worse things in the world. Like I can, but I want to still acknowledge that this is just so fucking stressful. And there was something that is really interesting about being under so much stress and pressure in your partnership and how that can go down. And actually one of the things that felt very 𝗬𝗁𝗂𝗂𝗁𝗂𝗁 to me was how my partner and I have managed to align with each other, getting our energy together, getting our shit together, you know, working together, making things happen, trying to lean in what we can and can't do, trying to be just so supportive of that for each other. And that is the gift that we've given each other. That is the exchange that we are having at the moment. That is, it feels like a triumph in a very challenging period of time. And we're kind of sort of, I suppose, taking turns with things as well. And one of the other things that I realised very quickly was that I then needed to do not only July's Patreon content, but the whole of August to make up for all of this time where things are going to be up in the air. And so as of today, I officially finished the last offering of August for Patreon, which means I have all 6 pieces of content up and scheduled and ready, and the whole of August is also covered for my Patreons, along with the 6 creations that I did this month. Don't ask me why they were both 6, that's just how it worked. So I feel incredibly proud of myself and triumphant, because that in reality is too much work for me to have done, and it did mean lots of working into the night and things like that, but I take my work and my offerings very seriously, and I wanted to make sure that all of the value and the expectations that I have of those offerings were still, you know, rich in, or at least I hope, in the way that I wanted them to be. But I feel like that's a massive triumph to have got that done. So that's kind of what has happened in this interesting experience, and I feel like some of this also came up in animal medicine, animal gnosis even. I'm forgetting my words. So the animal of our Patreon, and I'll do my little brief recap because of course no one has to be in my Patreon, but it is a big part of my practice each month. So I understand sometimes it's difficult for people because they feel like it's a bit of a sales pitch. It's genuinely not. I'm just sharing where my focus has taken me and what I have worked on, because I work alongside the people who are supporters of my offerings, and you know, trying to immerse myself in what we're doing each month. Some months are more themed than others, but that's kind of how it rolls. Thank you, 𝗪𝗏. I really, really appreciate that. I feel relieved for that instance, for sure. Thank you, Soulful Stories as well. I very much appreciate it. You're all very lovely. No one has to be in the Patreon, but it's so valuable, it's well worth it for you. Well, I'm honoured, 𝗪𝗏, and I very much appreciate your willingness to speak about it as well. It's been kind of surreal having a few of you mention me in videos and stuff. It's been lovely. It's that nice, warm, fuzzy community feeling that feels, yeah, is yummy and nice. So thank you. So this month we worked with 𝗣𝘁𝗲, and whilst there was a specific nuance that came through in my expression of working with 𝗣𝘁𝗲 gnosis and the animal's medicine, the reality of the animal's behaviour as far as humans can understand it through our lens scientifically, and then all of the other layers of working with spirit and working with 𝗣𝘁𝗲 perhaps in more folkloric fashions, you know, that all comes into it. I don't want to repeat myself too often, but it was interesting because there was this co-creative, very hands-on energy coming through. It's interesting because I didn't discuss home at all, but this particular card says home. I had a different one out for the first part of the month, and then I changed it to this just to mix it up a bit. This is from the Woodland Warden's Oracle. And again, home. Home is what you make of it, but this is very much mine, and I have feels. But there was this co-creation, hands-on, get work done, and obviously I created that before I had all of this other information. So it feels very, very synchronistic in particular. And one of the things that came up that was very nuanced perhaps to how I was working with 𝗣𝘁𝗲 and how I was presenting it to other people was a layer about discomfort. And so that was thematically a part of the month. And obviously what that means is the difference between discomfort and like forced suffering. There wasn't force. So, you know, I created a thematic spread around that, and really just to aid folks to consider what they were pursuing during the month. But yeah, there was just so much to dive into. Lots of exploration. They are incredibly ingenuitive, like engineers of the waterways essentially, and just fascinating to learn about. Absolutely fascinating, with only 2 species as well, which is, you know, normally there's lots. So you've got our European variant and then our American, I think specifically North American variant, if anyone's curious. So we had our spread, and that seemed to really work into these, even though the 2 things exist completely separately. A lot of how I work with the animals, just to answer a question that I'm often asked, changes from month to month. Sometimes something just randomly keeps popping up in my mind, and I feel compelled to write about them and explore them and share things about them and educate people on some of the things about them. Sometimes they're animals that I see natively and suddenly they're in and around me all the time, more than usual. Sometimes they feel very seasonal. Other times I may shuffle and pull them from a deck. I could dream about them and think, yep, it's just very vast. So it always feels particularly synchronistic, but this whole emergence of them was kind of surreal. And just to really quickly go over the other things that I did for Patreon this month, because it was a bit more of a varied one. The lovely 𝗪𝗏, who is here, actually requested a really cool video from me that I think that YouTube would have really enjoyed as well, depending if you're okay with out of print deck videos. But it's not just about the deck. So it's a video about the animal associations and the keywords on the Animal Wise Tarot, and I really get into it. It was such a fun request. It's a long video, but it was just one of those requests that was really, I don't know, when someone requests something from you and it just clicks and it's like, yeah, why haven't I done this? And it's because it feels too fun for me to, sometimes when I'm doing offerings, I am in my head about making sure that they're worth the financial value that people are paying for them. And I have this weird thing about, if things are too fun, maybe it's just me that wants to do them. But it seems to have been received really well, and it was a lot of fun. I love considering the associations. So as an example, it would be similar to us considering the associations on this, home and beaver. And obviously birch is involved as well, which I love. I have a big piece of birch out behind me at the moment. It's awesome. Too fun to be work. Yeah, I have problems, I know. I actually talk about this partially in a video in next month's Patreon, spoiler. Only momentarily, it's not the focus of the video, but I need to, yeah, it's really hard to put a value on something yourself, because of course my practice is of value to me, full stop. It's interesting. I don't know, maybe other creators who create where there's a paid subscription will be able to let me know what they think on it, or the people who pay for the subscriptions, I don't know. Feel free. And I also took everyone to the duck pond and really got into feeding time. I took them with my brother, so we had a fun little video up like that, which I'm really glad that I filmed, because I don't know if I'm going to be living near the duck pond anymore now, which is a sore subject. And I'm glad that I have that, like, even for me, that sort of memory block. And then what else did I do? Oh, I actually had a video go live today. So most of my coven members maybe have not seen it yet, because that's the tier it was on. And it's actually discussing my animal skulls, the guardianship of them, working with spirit, and the relationship and experience of naming them, because that's something that I take very seriously, that I feel is very intimate. And of course, there's another extension of not only my witchy practice, but how that traverses into animal work and all the variations of what I do, from education and sort of wildlife support to the more magical facets, which is why I say that my animal workings are a part of my witchcraft, and that it's very hard for people to understand, you know, what kind of witch are you? Because that's just something that's been created over a lifetime, if that makes sense. Hey, Julie. Welcome, welcome. There were ducks. Yes, there were ducks. Marlena's saying that she understands, because I miss my canal and wildlife along it so much. I bet it's so hard to move away from those things. It really is. And just the, you know, the genius Loki, and just all of those really powerful connections. And if I talk about it too much, I will get upset. So yeah, look forward to that in the coven video, folks, who are on Patreon, because that happens. It happens. So yes, that's the card recap. That is where I'm at. That's why I'm doing this video, because I will be in hospital next Friday, hopefully only for the day. And yeah, then as soon as I can get back on my feet, we'll be back to house hunting, unless we are visiting several places to rent at the weekend if all goes well. And this is why I said I can't completely summarize my month because it's not finished, but I literally have everything crossed, because I could really use that before the other stuff. Jess just woke up and lurking with my morning coffee. My brain is still a little unconscious. That's totally okay. I respect that, Jess. I hope that you're feeling better, by the way, and on the mend. It's 3 p.m. here and my brain is still partially unconscious, so no judgment. I thought I would bring in the other facets of 𝗬𝗍𝗄, but more like really on the nose, obvious, not really not really me thinking about the runes so much as I just so happen to reflect and think, oh, okay, in terms of just gift and the really physical exchange of gift now. So moving away from the more energetic facet, and that is 3 things. So one of the things that I always like to do when I'm spring cleaning, autumn cleaning, I do all variations, is give away some of my bits. I have sold some bits as well, which I will get to, but I like to give back in various ways. And obviously, because we're moving as well, I want to be mindful of how much pressure that is on my partner, given that my body can barely deal with packing. So I've got another one actually. I've got 2 massive bags. I've already taken one with my brother, thankfully, who's been very, very giving of his time actually, which fits into this as well. So our reciprocation is he comes here and he gets space from our lovely family, but of course he still lives with my parents and our youngest brother, so it's nice for him to get some space because he's in his 20s now. And we feed him and he, you know, gets to chill, and he helps me just with his very, very calm Capricorn grounded energy, although he would be like, don't say that, because he hates horoscopes, but he does. And he helped me. So we took a massive bag to the charity shop. I have a few more to go. And, you know, just all really things that I feel like will add value and joy to someone else's life. Nothing that's like falling apart or anything outrageous like that. So that was something that I have done. Not even thinking about even talking about it, but it is just interesting how it coincides with that, and how when this change occurred, it meant a shift of energy and material, and I think that that's really healthy. You know, I'm not sad about leaving my home and the material aspect of it. I'm sad about firstly the security aspects, and also my connection with the land and the neighbours and other things. So yeah, it's deeper than it can sometimes sound. And then onto a more gifty kind of thing, which I know people are always excited to see, so I will show them. And I will only be showing 2 of these items based on the fact that I can't show everything because my body will not let me pick everything up. And I did an unboxing video on Instagram, and you can watch those even if you're not a member of Instagram. But you may know by now from seeing my altar space that I love Pandora Witch Shop. They are a Ukrainian creator, or a set of creators, and they create witchy altar items and candles and other goods that are very luxurious and of course not required at all, but you know, I'm indoors a lot of the time. I like to enjoy my space, and they very, very kindly said they were sending me a gift. The lovely Nata, who is the head honcho of it, she's fabulous, and I was absolutely blown away by just how many gifts there were actually. So I'm just going to show you two of them. This is going on a wall eventually, maybe not in our next place because it's going to be another rental, but when we buy, whenever that happens for us, this is going on the wall. This is freaking gorgeous. So they're called Pandora Witch Shop. They sent me a 𝗬𝘂𝗍𝗂𝗧, which is also this size but in the darker brown colour that I like. A little miniature 2-drawer, yeah, it's just a stack of 2 drawers that you pull out, like a miniature cabinet, which I've got spell candles, and which they included for me, and one of my tarot decks in. They sent me this tarot card of the day, which, as you know, I use. I'll just put it up. I use my moth one all the time. It's currently got gallows on it, which that's where I'm at. And they also sent me the 3-card version of this. In fact, I also got artwork. I'm hoping my head didn't come into frame then. I got sent artwork specifically by Nata. What else was sent? A really large, glorious triple moon goddess candle. Am I forgetting anything? I hope not. And then this 3-card piece. Ah, I am. And I have to show you this next bit because I cried when I got it. And whilst I am a little bit more emotional of late, hopefully understandably, usually takes me a little bit more to cry. But I have bought things from Pandora Witch Shop for quite a few years now. But I have every faith I'm not their biggest purchase individual. We save up and I get like them for, I do a birthday order or perhaps a Yule order. And yes, their work is stunning, isn't it? They are stunning. Everyone is gushing. And I know, I felt so spoiled, but in a really nice way, you know? Like, I'm super done with feeling guilty about being given things. I'm really trying to let that one go. And so I have been, a lot of people laugh and say I'm a walking advertisement for them because I have 3 of their pieces on my altar perpetually. And I do, I love them. I use them all the time. To me, they're actually workable pieces as well. And like I said, I'm not about to be ashamed that whilst a lot of my craft isn't visual or aesthetic, some of it is, and I enjoy that too. And when she followed me back and they've engaged with me over the years, it's always a really nice feeling to know that creators are engaging with the people that support them or shout them out or buy from them or whatever it is, but you don't expect it, especially when someone has such a large following. And this other gift that they sent, I knew that they had been paying attention to things that I've ordered, to things that I've said, and to the other content that I often share that gets engaged with, even if I'm not mentioning their products, because I got... I nearly blew my candle out. I have to stop and say that Julie said, I'm totally not on the Pandora Witch Shop site right now. Nope, not me. This next piece, I cried. So if people don't know already, one of the animals that I have a long-standing relationship with, both in terms of trying to support them, bring awareness, support the ones in the wild locally, and then also have the extra sort of spirit work focus on them, is fox. And they sent me this. I can't tell you what it's made from. Is it like a clayey resin or something? I don't know. They do loads of these different animals. They can be painted differently. Yeah, I cried. I love it. And it was on the top of my wish list for the longest time. And we probably would have bought it actually for my birthday had we have not found out everything that was going on. So it was just, yeah, not expected. I'm completely blown away. I don't really know how to thank them any more than I already have, because it just doesn't feel like enough. It just doesn't. And I feel very lucky. Yeah, I'm really, really, really in love with this. So I didn't think I was going to have all the pieces out, but I wanted to unbox them and show them off as a kind of a really big thank you, and just show people like how I use them and stuff. So I have actually unpacked everything, but of course they all need to be packed back up very soon. So I've been trying to take this in as much as possible before I have to wrap them back up, which I will do very carefully and will take their lead, because they wrap things so ridiculously amazingly that anyone else who sells stuff that can be damaged or is breakable definitely needs to look at how they pack their stuff, because they are the kings and queens of it. They are the leaders. So yeah. I'm glad that people understand the tiers. And then finally, in terms of like stuff, which thank you for humouring me with my stuff, folks. I appreciate you all. My partner and I have I suppose I wouldn't call it a silly, it's not even ritual, it's just something silly and definitely superficial, that I'm very much into Halloween and very what's seemingly considered, you know, witchy, occult aesthetics, and I always have been since I was really little. That's not new. That's, you know, a very big reflection of my parents and the people I grew up around as well. My dad likes the very dark and macabre. My stepmom and my biological mum very much like hippie, and I'm like and there's some other like punky and goth stuff in there, and I'm just like a smattering of all these things confused together. And anyway, I really enjoy Halloween, and I know there are some really unhelpful layers of like how much plastic goes into things like that as well, and I do try and be a very mindful consumer without completely living in an unrealistic way for myself. But one of the silly, just don't need to do it, but we do it things is when Code Orange happens, and it happens earlier every year, which is a little frustrating if I'm honest, because I don't like to wish time away, even though I love Halloween. I enjoy summer. August is my birthday month. It's my dad's birthday month. It's one of my brother's birthdays. There's a lot of Leos in my family. I'm estranged from my biological mum, but it's actually her birthday and one of my sisters as well. And a cousin. Yeah, a lot of Leos. But Code Orange happened early, and my partner goes in and he always buys me a Halloweeny witchy cup. I love mugs. I love mugs and cups. And so this was the one that I got this year, and we've probably been doing this for about 4 years. And so if you were to ever come and have a drink in my house, none of the cups match, because this is how I roll. Instead of wasting my money on buying matching cups, I prefer to have these opportunities to buy things that completely excite me, because it's not like we have a lot of visitors anyway. And this is quite a femme feeling purple colour inside for me. Usually I go for like really darks or the really like cliche Halloween colours, but I really love this mug. And this was from TK Maxx. Usually I think they're seconds. That's my guess anyway. But yeah, Code Orange, folks. TK Maxx has been at it since June, which is absurd to me. And I wasn't going to get one this year because financially things are going to change for us a lot now that we've got to move. especially in the climate where we live. And it just felt really needless, and my partner gently and lovingly pushed back on that and was like, we're getting it for you. So yeah, this is my yearly ritual, silly buying ritual, is intact, and that's the last of like the gifty portion. And we will just get into the last few bits about decks and things, which, as you can imagine, I have worked so much, and obviously I'm still doing tarot readings and I'm still seeing therapy clients for my other private practice as a therapist. Whilst it's not a massive rotation of clients, you know, it's no secret I have a lot of pain, I'm disabled, I have all that boring stuff to contend with. So working so much has meant that most of the things that I have done have been outside, away from cards and the ultra and stuff, just really trying to take in as much of my garden and the land and the energy as I possibly can before I bid it my final farewells. But mismatched mugs for the win, says Jess. Yes. You think Dunkin' Donuts already has their pumpkin items available? Code Orange is creeping in. Ooh, Dunkin' Donuts. I feel like that's very, I want to say American. Am I right? Is that American? I don't even know if we have anything like that over here, but I'm really not the best for asking, like, what's a thing in your country? I seem to be very out of the loop. I don't know why. So yes, I have done very minimal deck stuff. Okay, very American. Well, I'm glad that at least I'm mildly informed. So the tarot deck that I used this month was actually the Wild Unknown, because my relationship with this deck is basically twofold. I mean, for people who have been here for a very long time over the years, and again, I think I've been on YouTube since 2016, but I don't remember, will know that this has always been a solid reader for me, and has always been a really top of, not the very top, but always in and around the top of my go-to decks, and that doesn't really change, to be honest. And for me, there's a really interesting space in this where it's a deck that I come to when I'm feeling overwhelmed, and I think that sometimes that sounds like, oh, okay, because it's gentle, and it's not. It's actually what I would refer to as a very straight shooter energetically, but even more so like just the relationship I have with the imagery, and the fact that some of these cards are very good at representing a very challenging expression of that card's energy. That is something that this deck does really well. It's really good at expressions of discomfort, bringing back into that theme of the month, but it's very clear. I don't find myself, even in the most overwhelmed moments, staring at this deck, not knowing what is being said, you know, what is being brought to my attention, what is being discussed time and time and time and time again. Whether people feel like it's a cliche to own this deck or it's cool and funky, I have no care, because it's other people's opinions of decks don't really change our relationship with them, hopefully. Because this comes in and out of fashion and discussions like Marmite at this stage. But this is the one that I used I actually pulled the cards from the discomfort spread that I created as an expansion of some of the 𝗣𝘁𝗁𝗀𝗍 on Patreon. And was it a 7 card spread, I want to say, or a 6, and I got a jumper there or thereabouts. and I'm still working with some of the messages, but this really just brought home why this deck continues to be such a staple for me, even if I haven't used it for a long time. It's been a big part of like inspiring poetry, moving through some really difficult expressions. And one of the things I love about it so much, which may sound really obscure, is that it feels like its own entity. Like, I'm aware it has a creator, and I freaking love her art style endlessly. Her art style is just something that I find so sumptuous. But I don't really have any further awareness, information. Like, I have some. There's a really, what feels like quite a vulnerable exploration in the Wild Unknown Archetypes deck, but for the most part it's weird. It just feels like this individual thing, and I know it's attached to a human and their brand and all of that other stuff, but it kind of sits alone for me. Which brings me, I have 2 other decks to show, but I'm so glad that you're enjoying the deck, by the way, Jess. I think it wasn't one of your first, if not your first, that you were given. I feel like, if I'm remembering correctly. My memory is pretty shocking, let's face it. But yeah. Marlena says, I'm fascinated every time I hear you say how long you work with anyone reading. I feel like there's a slow tarot practice I want to explore. Yes, I'm very slow. Don't get me wrong. Interestingly enough, I will do quick readings in between, but they're not with the same deck. They're not for the same purpose at all, like in any stretch of the imagination, and they're never other proper spreads. So I will use the cards for ritual, or I will use it for spirit communication, or I will use it for like a really quick check-in, that kind of fast cut. But when I pull a spread, yeah, I can be quite slow. Which I know that you're saying is a compliment, but it does make me chuckle. It's if I didn't do as much card work in other ways as I do, I definitely wouldn't get through all of my decks. But because I do so much other card work and offerings and other stuff for other people, I still manage to get through them, fortunately. But I thought I would quickly say several of the decks that I parted with this month, because I think they will surprise people, and it also wraps into, it's not quite a series, but a minor thing that I was doing based off of Logan of Larkin Legends tag, which is decks that we plan to work with in 2023, but I can't remember the tag name. And then I did a check-in on how that was going, and then I intend to do another 1 to 2 check-ins throughout the year as well. But one of the decks in that I was really unsure of was the Wild Unknown Alchemy deck, and I love Kim's artwork so much I really thought I would keep it, but it was starting to feel too much like a completionist thing, and I was not using that deck. I love the Archetypes deck. I was not shuffling the Alchemy deck. It was driving me potty. It's honestly, if it was circular, it would have perhaps helped. And then I'm not the most versed by any stretch of the imagination when it comes to a lot of the alchemical stuff. And yes, deck reconnect. Thank you, Julie. You legend. The Wild Unknown definitely has teeth. I said 𝗳𝗍𝗄𝗄 word tarot earlier. 𝗳𝗍𝗄𝗄 tarot. That's the right way around, right? Useless. And Jess says, yeah, it was my first deck gifted to me. It totally went over my head in the beginning, but I fell in love. Yes, it went over mine in the beginning, especially when I decided that was the same time I was going to finally learn 𝗪𝗺-Smith, because I'd always read more intuitively. And yeah, that was not the best idea. Oh, you like both names? Well, that's good then. So yes, I sold two Wild Unknown decks, but the other one is not such a big deal, I suppose. So I partied with and sold the Alchemy Oracle because it was just not getting used, and I can't deal with that. And I also sold my mini because really my mini, I thought it would see far more use than it was. And I really loved the Rainbow Justice card and some of the commentary that sort of brought up. But there was some of it that I also thought was, I agreed was kind of, I don't know. There were, yeah, it was the whole gimmicky time that it came out and stuff. I have not enough information on that, but basically it was a very mini deck. And the reason I got it is because both of my copies of this are indie. I have the first and second edition indie. And I am very clumsy and all of that stuff. And so it's far more likely for my tarot decks to genuinely get ruined. Not just like, oh, it's got a splatter on it, but cards are literally bent in half. Like, it happens to me, folks. But this is the second edition. This is the one that I'm most bonded with. And therefore, to most people's dismay, I just take my first edition out and about with me, if I'm out and about. So, yeah, I just don't get on with the mini as much as I thought I was going to, so I also sold that. And the other deck that I parted with, that I felt only a tiny pang of guilt, because it was a lovely gift. And it was a very thoughtful one, and it was very appropriate for my taste. But most people know, like, I don't do keeping stuff just for sentimental reasons. And my dad had bought me the Nightmare Before Christmas tarot, and I do think that it had come on leaps and bounds with some of the minors in comparison to some of the other Insight Edition decks. But in the end, there were some holes in it for me that just weren't working. So I also parted with the Nightmare Before Christmas tarot. I think that was the only 3 I parted with this month. I think. And then I used 2 other decks this month. The Coastal Curiosities, of course. I actually did a video which is on my shorts as well as my Instagram, sharing the urn that I had chosen for our 2 leopard geckos' cremation remains. And the reason I shared that was to help people who were grieving and looking for something that wasn't traditional. So there was thought behind sharing it, because it is a very sacred and private thing otherwise. But when I was preparing to share it, I decided to pull a card from this, and I pulled the Whisper card, and it just felt really synchronistic and like a very spirit connective moment between me and my boys. So that just felt really special. And this is one of the decks that I have been pulling cards from in between working with my big reading. So if anyone's curious, this is one of the decks. I'm still loving it. It goes with everything, but I've been massively overwhelmed. So I've just been pulling 1 card from it and leaving that 1 card either out on one of my card displays, or, you know, considering its message for the day, and then allowing it just to be a daily thing. I have had this one a few times, which makes sense. I've spoken about this quite a lot in recent weeks, and I do plan to review it eventually, so I won't harp on for too long. But, you know, animals, nature, the creator, the thought behind it, it's all when one of those decks just hits as close. See, I want to say perfection, but I don't believe perfection is a real thing. It's such a subjective concept, and also in terms of like emotionally, I don't think that it's healthy for us to chase it. But in terms of what I hope for from an oracle deck and what I experience in my practice, this delivers as all expectations, hopes and beyond. This has hit every bit that I wanted to. I am absolutely obsessed with it, and I can just only promise and reassure you that I'm not just saying this because the creator gifted it to me. It is not that. It was already on my wish list. It has completely blown my socks off, and I freaking love it. I do. It's so good. So good. It has a very homely vibe to it, actually. There's something that feels quite nurturing, quite comforting, like a mix of perhaps the energy that Lennox put into it and what it represents for her, but also the fact that obviously it's got animals and nature and all of that good stuff. And then on a much more tactile and superficial note, the linen and how soft it is on my hands and how it doesn't bring that pain into them. It's a very lovely, soft experience overall. And then the last deck I worked with, which I wouldn't say it's a cardinal rule, because for sure it was not, but I did something that I did not expect with the Memento Mori. And this is, as always, my gorgeous 𝗪𝗿𝗄𝗃 bag. I love 𝗪𝗿𝗄𝗃. She rocks. This is the Memento Mori. I have done a review of it. Although the review quality, I don't know what happened with the camera that day, but it has remained a deck that I used solely for my own purposes, and I did not expect this to change, but at all. Let's flip these. And then I was doing a reading for someone last week, and we ended up using this oracle alongside... What tarot deck was it? I want to say the Anima Mundi tarot. So I probably should have got that out as well, but I haven't, so never mind. But we used this oracle for them. And it was a very instinctual, spur of the moment. It was just a natural, yes, this makes sense. Yes, they like this deck. Yep, this is the one that we're going to use to expand upon this tarot reading and dive into some more symbolic offerings and direction. And so, yeah, I use this for someone else. I don't know that that would be a regular thing. And I feel like I would probably be really particular about that, for sure. But it was one of those times. It was one of those people that I have read for before. It's someone I know. There's that intimacy, and yeah, I used this, and it was incredibly chatty, all but one card, which I love that the Memento likes to throw something rogue at me that feels quite abstract and sort of forces me to sit with it for a while, which is fine. I don't mind doing that. I would never profess to not have that experience just because I was reading for someone else. So yeah, I used the Memento for someone else after, I'm pretty sure, recently saying that I hadn't and that I had no intention to do such. So this is why I'm a big believer in never say never, because whilst I'm sure there are some nevers that we would be pretty certain of, this is what happens. That's 2 decks I've done that with in 2023, which is the Memento and also the Story Medicine Tarot. I think that was 2023. Let me check my notes before I finish up, because this has nearly been an hour, which is way longer than these usually are. And I probably haven't got much else to tell you, if I'm honest. I have a book here that I will show. I have started trying to read again. I don't know why I chose this time, if I'm honest. It couldn't be a weirder time to have chosen to try and start getting into reading again. And I'm not going to bore you with the various reasons why reading has been a struggle for me, other than to say there's a lot that goes on for me physically as well. So the process of being still is a whole thing. I often am reading and wandering around to try and counteract stuff with my body. But I love to read, and I'm a very booky person. So I decided to return to this series because I had read, what is it called? It's not Bone and Stone, it's something along the lines. The first one. This is a 3-part series. No, I haven't watched it on Netflix, and I probably won't. Oh, there we go, Shadow and Bone. So I had read Shadow and Bone and really enjoyed it. I'm rubbish at reviewing books, by the way. I don't have all of that. I can, actually, that's not true. I'm really bad at reviewing fiction because it falls into a very different layer for me. Like, I can get into fact and find it a lot easier to kind of fall into those questions and debate and the kind of, I suppose, gentle critique of how things are offered, if they're educational or if they're incorrect or just stylistically. And I find that a lot easier until I get into fiction. So I'm great with tarot books as well, which I don't actually know where they would fall, but they're very instructional, you know, even the story-based ones. But there's something about when I read fiction, I feel like I just tune out, because I know there's been some, is it backlash or something about, I don't even remember what it was about the Grishaverse, but whether it sort of seemed like it was borrowing from a culture, but then like a European culture, but it hadn't done a very good job of it and hadn't really committed to it either way. I really can't remember, but basically it falls down to the fact I either really like the book or I don't. I am not a fussy fiction reader as long as it's in my genres, and my genres are predominantly fantasy. I love fantasy fiction, and that includes young adult, which, is this young adult? I think it might be. Yeah. So I had originally read a little bit of it, but it was so long ago that I started it again. I've been reading it for several days, and I am actually, this is amazing for me for several days, given that I have to reread pages sometimes just from like stress, where it's like I'm lapsing, worrying about something, and I'm not taking in what I'm reading. So I definitely need to get the third and final one. Perhaps I will ask for it for my birthday, because I think it's quite cheap at the moment. But yes, I have returned to reading, and I decided to do myself a favour and just read something light and easy, and I really enjoy it. And if you enjoy things like the Raven Cycle series, and you like fantasy and young adult, and you're pretty chilled out like myself, and that's not a critique at people who critique books, I mean chilled out and like not really aware of those things, like it's just, it's fantasy and it's not so much in your arsenal to be critiquing it the whole way through, then perhaps you will enjoy this one. It's yeah, it has to be young adult, because it has that whole like it has the young adult relational vibe to it, the longing. The longing. Yeah, I'm enjoying it, and again, for me it's another win, to be honest. And I have continued to play a little bit of Zelda, but I'm having, like I said, I don't want to talk about it a lot. It's, I'm sure, very boring for other people, but my reality is I have a lot of conditions that cause me pain, and on top of being stressed out and having to drive lots to try and view houses and packing and other bits and pieces, my body is having just about every flare up at once that it can possibly deal with. Or possibly has in its not that it can deal with, it can't deal with it, that's the problem. It's been bad, let's just put it that way. I sound chipper, but I am clinging on with anticipation for my body just chilling out at some point, which is not going to happen after the hospital, but hopefully in a couple of weeks after September, I don't know. So I haven't been able to play as much of my Switch, although I can move around a bit when I'm playing it because I play it docked. But I am still really, really enjoying the second Zelda. I can't remember what it's called, Tears of the Kingdom. So I'm still playing that as well, but it's super sporadically. And I don't like to play it in too short increments because it's, I don't know, I sort of don't feel like I'm in the storyline enough. And it's quite an immersive game in my experience. So that's where I'm at. I just want to catch up with your comments and give you a chance to say anything else before I call it a day and finish it up, because of course there are other stuff that I did in a month, most of them not fun. I watched some stuff on Netflix, but honestly I don't even remember to recommend any of it, so let's have a look. Jess says, I enjoy reading while talking around. Do you mean walking around the house or backyard or stretching? Awesome. It's definitely a challenge. Oh yeah, you said walking. It's definitely a challenge for me. I'm quite clumsy as well, so I will genuinely walk into shit, but I'm trying to find new ways to read on the move. I can see people have mentioned audiobooks as well. When I've just said I'm not fussy about reading fantasy fiction, I'm not when it's in hands. I'm really fussy about narration. I have mid-level hearing loss as well, so if the narrator's voice is at the right point, sometimes I can struggle to pick things up, dependent on just so many different variants that occur in different humans' voices. So, and also if the narrator isn't, I've been spoilt for choice. Do you know whose narration I really enjoy? 𝗵𝘁𝗁𝗀𝗻. And my dad used to read me books when I went back and was living with him and my grandparents. About 6.5, I think from about 7 he started reading me a bedtime story occasionally, and he would read me 𝗬𝗫𝗫𝗀𝗀𝗃, which was one of my favourites, 𝗓𝗏𝗏, and he would do voices. He is amazing at voices and picking up different like accent tones and various things, and he can do like animal noises and all sorts. So I've been properly spoilt for choice, having my own narrator at points during childhood, and then, you know, 𝗵𝘁𝗁𝗀𝗀 is like awesome. He does voices too. So yeah, I'm fussy basically. Zelda is so addictive, isn't it, Alicia? Alicia or Alyssa? Alicia. I'm very sorry if I've got your name wrong. It's not personal. Marlena says, I'm terrible with audio fiction books. My mind wanders. I can do non-fiction on audio. That's really interesting. See, and that's the thing, we're all so particular, aren't we? In the grand scheme of things, like there's a lot that connects humans and just really doesn't make us that different from each other. But then our little particular quirks are those funny bits that makes recommendations like that more difficult. Because one of my other favourite things is when the creator reads the audio themselves, because in my book they always do a better job of it than anyone else. Almost always, barring 𝗵𝘁𝗁𝗀𝗀𝗀. He can do anyone's. But I have both the hard copy and then I got the audio because I wasn't finishing it, of Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. Again, her name, I'm sure she's not watching, but I'm still sorry. Braiding Sweetgrass is beautiful, and the audio to it is like being taken off and rocked gently. Her voice is just so powerful. It's such an intimate experience. And then also, if anyone's curious, Claire of Black and the Moon does her own audio for her book of seances, which I haven't listened to, but I have listened to Claire do her podcast, and yeah, I could listen to her for hours. And then the other one is, I've got also, again, a hard copy and the audio of the poetic Edda, the Jackson Crawford edit. And he is awesome to listen to, and his pronunciation really helps me to learn the pronunciation of various Norse gods' names and just things that come up in the myth and the runes. I find it very helpful. So yeah, I'm not anti-audio. I actually really love a good audio. My stepmom sent me the Alan Watts collection and that was really interesting to listen to. He articulates himself really well and clear. But when it comes to like fantasy, I think that I looked up both I don't know if the 𝗲𝘁𝗁𝗀, I don't think it was done by Maggie, and I was disappointed, if I'm remembering correct. And then I think I listened to a bit from this and was like, no, I'm just going to read the book. Thank you for the healing and the love and all of that from all of you. You've been very supportive. I'm just catching up with the last few before I go. Also, I've noticed a few people have commented on my rabbit fur recently, and all of my items are ethical, and I'm just going to leave it at that, because I think that the people that are commenting don't follow me and are probably just trying to cause something. But it's very soft and I do stroke it, and a few people have commented and moaned about it recently. So yeah, look up my ethics before assumptions are made, pretty please. The faraway tree brings back memories. Wasn't it beautiful? It was such a fun selection of stories, or like series of books, because there was more than one. Jess says, I have such a hard time when Neil Gaiman narrates her book. I love his voice, but it's so calming that you fell asleep every time. I love that. I feel like that would happen if I listened to Morgan Freeman read. Oh, that's funny. Well, I'm sorry if I missed anything. Oh, Jess also said thrillers are my fave on audiobook. Oh, I've never tried a thriller on audio. I tend to be more of a thriller movie person than thriller books. But then I have read a lot of Stephen King books, so I don't know if you chuck him into thriller or horror, because I'm crap at genres, but either way, I like Stephen King. So yeah, I'm going to finish it up there. I have loved that I have had such good company. Thank you. Thank you for most of you, I think, spending your morning with me. I think most of you are from various places across the pond. I hope that this still has some replayability for those people who watch it back, which is why I'm going to cap it off really quickly now before it hits an hour and 15 minutes. I'm sending you all lots of love. I hope things are as peaceful as they can be for everyone, because, you know, peace can never be overrated. Or boredom, you know. Sometimes when I'm bored, I think, this is a nice place to be. So, yeah. Thank you very much. I appreciate you all holding space for me. It's very much felt and appreciated. And I will catch you all at some point in August, but it could very much be the end of it. And it may be an on-the-fly video in the middle of wherever. So, yeah, just know I'm around on my various platforms, but how that looks could change temporarily. And yeah, ciao for now.